Hello everyone, what I want to show you next is the mechanism I set up for summoning a Pokemon. So let's take a look. So I just want to drag in right now my prefab of a Pokeball, and I want to show you how this works. So I have a Pokeball here, and I want to go into my animation, so I'll go Window, Animation. Now notice I'm not an animator, I'm an animation. And if I just drag this along here, you could follow along that what I did was I made it open. I made it do some turns, and I made it open up at the end as it travels that distance. And how I did this was I just went in and I would just add a property, whether I wanted to affect the transform or what have you. As long as this records button is clicked and I go to a new keyframe, I could move this around however I want, and it'll reflect those changes in the animation. And then I have like a minute or a second and 20 tenths or 50 tenths of a second animation, so like a second and a half animation. So how I made this Pokeball open up is that I actually, as I showed you in another video, I placed the pivot point to the top of the Pokeball at the back so that it popped open like that. And then what I did was I activated a particle effect to make the summoning, to make the like that white happen when you summon a Pokemon. So for those of you that haven't seen this effect yet, I'm just going to jump in and show you this really quick. It is in some of my prior videos, but in case this is like a one-time shot for you with this tutorial series and you're just watching this one video, I'll just choose 3 different Pokemon, and we'll see them get summoned in just a second. So the game does what it needs to do. It shows us Pokemon battle, and now you're going to see Pokemon be summoned. So the Pokeball flies through the air, it opens up, releases this particle effect, and voila, there goes my Pokemon. And you'll see the Pokeball off in the background. And you'll notice it disappears. And then now I have his attacks to choose from, so on and so forth. So I showed you how that animation was played, but let me take you actually through the script now. So I have a game state. This is an empty game object, and I have a game state script attached to this empty game object, and I want to take you through this code here briefly. So I have a bunch of variables here, but let's go to update and see what the basic premise of the code does. So first, you'll see update has a bunch of timers, and we'll see that we're adding to this game, or actually one timer, a game timer, and we're checking though for a bunch of different conditions, if it's greater than this value, if it's greater than this value. So what exactly are we trying to do? Well, first, I just realized I could actually put an else if here. That was a minor change that I forgot to make. So we have different functions that I wrote. Anytime you have code that you're going to be reusing, you want to create a function out of it. So these functions don't return any sort of value, so we write type void before them. So they have a return value of the void type. Void means they don't have a return value, right? So enable left camera does just that. It enables the left camera. Left is the side of the enemy, right is the side of the player. So we have enable left camera, which is going to set the left camera to true. Right? We also have enable the right camera. We also have disable right camera, and we also have disable left camera. So by messing around with these functions, by calling them in certain sequences, we could make the effect where the camera switches from our side to the enemy's side while we're summoning these Pokemon. So now that we looked at this code and we saw that if the game timer has reached a certain time, we're enabling and disabling these cameras. We're also setting active the Pokeball. So there's a left Pokeball and a right Pokeball. Left for our enemy, right for us. And on that Pokeball, let me show you what there is. Right Pokeball, just an animator. So all the summoning actually happens through this, through some sort of summoning script. Now we have 2 summoning scripts: summon a Pokemon enemy and summon a Pokemon player. Now let me just check where those are. Those are attached to some sort of universal game object. Okay, so summon a Pokemon player is attached to the right camera. That's right, I attach it to the player's camera. Summon a Pokemon for the enemy is attached to the left Pokeball. Sorry, the left camera. Right? So let me take you through what actually happens when we summon a Pokemon. And actually, I want to summon a Pokemon player. I want to show you that one, because player is a little bit more in-depth because we're actually selecting the Pokemon and stuff. So what I have here, we call this a switch statement, and basically if the timer hits a certain thing, depending on who the player chose as the first Pokemon, which is in that string list. If you didn't watch some of my past tutorials where I explained how this team selection is managed, then you should definitely watch that. And each of these different cases is responded to by setting that Pokemon active. So what I could show you here, if we jump back into Unity, is right now both players have all those Pokemon summoned, but those game objects are inactive. So when we're only going to have realistically a team of 3 Pokemon on each side, and when that happens, we're going to activate them one at a time by simply enabling the game object. So basically, we're only going to need to enable a game object when a Pokemon is summoned, and disable a game object when a Pokemon is destroyed. So don't worry if you're afraid that, well, we have these game objects that we're enabling, shouldn't we just be instantiating one? Yes, you could instantiate them, but we're not taxing it so much, the Unity so much. We may be taxing it a little bit extra, but we're not taxing it so much that it would simply, all at once, crash or something. Now, if we were constantly turning these game objects on and off, what I would recommend to you would be, well, you see how there's a mesh renderer attached to some of these things. If we could somehow group these objects or combine them in Maya and then turn on and off this mesh renderer, that could potentially be something to look into as well. It all depends on what you're trying to do. Here, we don't need that game object unless we've summoned that Pokemon. So the only time we're ever going to activate these is if we have that Pokemon as our active Pokemon and it's been summoned. So that's about it for those scripts. But in the next tutorial, I'm actually going to start to talk about the Pokemon attacks and show you how I used the particle system within Unity to create all of those attacks from scratch.